Thank you for joining us for Part 4, How to Build a Website for a Small Business.
Within WordPress, there are a couple of different ways to create pages. WordPress has a native editor for creating content. It's called Gutenberg now. That's relatively recent. It's a big change to the old classic editor that you will be used to. It's pretty intuitive, but it is a big change because it's now a block editor, and I've got a couple of screenshots that I'll show you, and I can take you in at the end. We'll go and have a look at what it looks like. It allows you to create columns and rows far more easily than you were able to before in WordPress. So that's the big thing, is being able to more easily lay out content on a page so that it's not just all one thing after another. You can now create columns, you can create different layouts because you create rows and then you insert content blocks into those rows. It's really good for creating pages really quickly and easily. It's very straightforward, but it is somewhat limited in the customization that you can then do to those elements. So once you insert a widget into it, a block as they call it, you have some limited customization available depending on the type of block that it is, but not everything that you might get with a page builder. Page Builder is a plugin that you can add that will allow you to create far more advanced customizable layouts on pages. But they are more difficult to use. You need to understand a little bit more about the different types of content that you might want to use and how they work. There are sometimes there are more settings available to you to change, but that obviously means needing a certain amount of knowledge as to what those settings mean. You start to get far more into margins and padding and blocks in relation to other blocks and how, have fixed positions. And so there's a lot more to a page builder than there is in Gutenberg. But once you get used to a page builder, it becomes fairly easy to lay out with them, and you do have a lot more customization options available with the page builder than you do with the Gutenberg editor. Having said that, you can create a pretty nice, clean, simple site just using Gutenberg. If there's nothing massively complicated that you want to do in there, then Gutenberg can be very good, and it's fast to get pages up and running in it. So Gutenberg, the way it works is that it works in they call them blocks, and in every row you can tell it whether you want that to just be a row with, for example, a heading in it or a paragraph of text in it, or you can insert images, you can insert galleries in there, you can add spacers, you can add buttons to link you through, clickable buttons to link you to other content. You can add, I'm trying to think of some other things. Well, you can embed things like YouTube videos, content from the web, you can embed that in there. You can add links to any other kind of content, to other websites, to other pages on your website. You can add code in there if there is something clever that you want to do. Then they have blocks that are HTML blocks, that are shortcode blocks. So they have all the blocks that you will see in a page builder, but their customization, which will appear every time you're in a block, you'll get on the right hand side, it will show you what you can customize there. Sometimes it's a little bit more limited than you might get with a full-blown page builder. So it really depends what you need and what you're looking for. But as a starting point, Gutenberg's a very good editor, and it's a huge step forward from the old classic editor. Makes it much easier to lay things out without needing to know any HTML coding in the background to get it to do things. The old classic editor, I used to write those posts in the HTML editor so that I could always see how it was being laid out and adding in bold text and all those sorts of things. It's much easier to do that now. It's far more like a text editor that you would expect in terms of adding content into it. At SDM, we use a page builder called Beaver Builder, which is quite a common builder for businesses where you have an IT company that have done it, and they have a license with Beaver Builder, and you can then have multiple sites sitting underneath that. So it's a very common kind of enterprise type page builder that you see. It's pretty good. It works in, they call them modules, which is basically a block in Gutenberg. And it's the same thing. You create rows, you say whether you want that row to have 1 column or 2 columns or 3 columns or however you want to lay it out. And then you choose your modules to go into that layout. You do then have some more advanced settings within there, and that's where you start to get a few more options in terms of what you can do with that content. And then there's a very popular free page builder called Elementor, which you'll see a lot of sites use because the free version of it is very good. They do a pro version, as all these things, and which has some more advanced features in it and access to a huge library of templates and resources that you can use, which is really useful. Even in the free version, there are templates that allow you to basically drop ready-built pages into it that you then add your own images and content to, are fantastic. If you don't want to try and design a page from scratch, you can drop in one of their library templates, whether that's for like a section on a page or an entire page, and that gives you a really good starting point in terms of building pages. So it can be, again, very fast to kind of get started. Like Gutenberg and Beaver Builder, you start with rows and columns, and then you add, in this case, they call them elements, which are basically little widgets that you add in, and they come with their own. But both of these two, and there are other page builders, there are some other more specific ones that come with specific themes, will allow you to also use all the WordPress block widgets that you can get through Gutenberg as well. So that's 3 different ways of building pages, and really which way you go depends how much design you want to do and how much content you have and how bespoke your pages might be. So it's kind of layers of customization ability. Posts, these are dynamic, they're time-based. You post a piece of content and tomorrow you might post another piece of content, just like a traditional blog where you post a new piece of content every day or every week. They'll publish to a feed, which is in reverse chronological order generally, and you can use that functionality as a blog, or you can use it for other things. So as I said earlier, I quite often see it being used for news articles or links to press releases, links to basically to advertising new services, new products when you have a sale on. It allows you to generate a piece of content that can be pretty short, to the point, is specific, that you can then share across social media, just taking people to that piece of news that you want people to know about. So it's giving you the ability to update your website without having to update the structure of it. You can add new bits of content using the blog function. It's great for linking to your social media. It's actually good for a website to be regularly updated. Google quite likes to know that websites aren't just sitting there being ignored. If they're seeing regular new content to things, then that's a plus as far as Google's concerned. And I often see it used very well as storytelling. It's like an extra element to your business. It can be used to day in the life, story behind the business, story behind the product. You can use it for keeping people updated on you, and quite often, particularly for small businesses where you don't have lots and lots of staff and the business is really you, people like to get to know you. They feel more comfortable buying services from someone that they can relate to, that's authentic and has a voice that they know. So I'll have this conversation quite often where people are like, well, I'm not a blog. I don't need to use that. I'm just gonna, just need my few pages and I'm there. And then as time goes on, they begin to realize how powerful that element can be to a website, particularly as it doesn't need to be anything particularly long or wordy or complicated. It's just a way of keeping in touch with people. They are far simpler in terms of the content and layout, so you don't need to use anything more complicated than Gutenberg to create a nice piece of content with some images in it, with links to other things, links to other content. So I would always recommend just sticking with the WordPress editor for writing post content. Occasionally, you may have a very particular style to a website and you want the blog page to match it exactly. And then I've seen people create a template within a page builder that they then use to create their posts so that there's consistency of branding around if it's a particularly strongly branded website where the white space thing isn't being used in quite the same way. Then they may create a template in a page builder that they then they insert that template each time and they use that to each time they create a piece of content. But you wouldn't do that every time. You would do that once. You'd create a template and then you would use that template for it. But posts can be pretty simple. They don't need to get complicated. They shouldn't be time consuming. It should be a fast way to send out news. Okay. So as we're talking about pages and posts, images. People like images. You don't want to have pages that are all text. There needs to be some kind of graphical element to them. You do not need to upload image files at the size that they come out of your camera. And in fact, you really shouldn't. It's too big. It will start to very quickly use up space on your website. They're slower to load, and you just simply don't need them. You should always optimize images for web. This isn't something that people are going to print. It's a website. The DPI on them it can be much, much lower than it needs to be for print. So before you upload any images into WordPress, you should reduce the size of them so that they're the size they need to be for where you're using them on your site. That will make the file sizes much smaller, and it means that everything you're uploading into your site is optimized before you begin. When you upload an image into WordPress, it actually creates multiple versions of that image anyway. So if you're adding big file sizes, then you're actually adding more than one big file size. And although the 150 by 150 thumbnail will be smaller than your 4096 by whatever original camera image might be, you're still going to have far bigger file sizes than you need. If you're looking at an image that's come out of your phone camera, for example, you're quite possibly looking at a 3 megabyte, 4 megabyte image. Really, you should be uploading images that are more in the hundreds of kilobytes, even as low as 100 kilobytes for your image versus 4 megabytes. It's good practice to do it, and if you get into the habit of doing it off the bat, then it's much easier going forward. Always upload at the largest size you might need. Within WordPress, you can't really manipulate image sizes particularly effectively. You can use a large image as a thumbnail, but you can't go the other way. So if you upload all your images at 300 by 300, but then you want it to span across the page, you can't do that with that image. You would have to upload another version of that image that's a bigger size. Most central panes on a website where the content sits, so ignoring the sidebar where the content sits, is often around, well, here the default for WordPress is 1024 wide for the images that you upload a large image. That's pretty consistent. You might look at uploading maybe 1200 wide to just give you a little bit of a buffer on there to make sure within your theme it can span the full width of the content area. Some blog type feeds, it's actually only about 700 that is actually displayed at. if you have a sidebar in there. So understanding your theme image sizes and where you're actually going to be using them is a good starting point. If you're not sure, then upload them at around 1,000 or 1,200 pixels wide, and then you know that you'll be able to use them anywhere on the site without losing any quality on the image. You can, as I say, do a certain amount of manipulating image sizes on WordPress because you can go into the HTML code of the image and change the size of it, but it's really not a good way to mess around with images in WordPress. You need them to be the size and shape that you want them to be before you upload them. There are some online tools that you can use for that, depending on what laptop you're using. You can use, if you're on a Mac, for example, you can use the preview image option to change the size of images, to resize them. It's a little I personally find it a little fiddly because I can't just type in the size I want it to be. I have to box it and crop it and stuff. It's a lot easier. You can resize in one dimension, but then if you want to crop, it's a little bit more difficult. There are some very good online tools. I have a couple of tools that I use, which if you want more advanced options from a graphics tool, if you're going to be doing a lot of that kind of stuff for social media posts as well as website posts and creating flyers or anything else that you want to do, then there's a tool called PicMonkey and a tool called Canva, which are both very good. PicMonkey is a paid tool. Canva is free. They're both very good for creating exactly the size you want to create quickly. Photor is another one that I quite often use, which is a free online tool, which allows you to very quickly resize images and to crop images at just typing in the dimensions that you want. So there's a number of different ways that you can do that. All that to say is it's really important to optimize your images before you upload them into WordPress. And there are several different ways that you can do it, and we can look at that. Then we get to menus and your archives and your sidebar. So all those other little bits that go around the main content on your site that you can use to help structure it and to help people navigate around the site. Creating menus is actually relatively straightforward. Most themes will have one or two, maybe even three places that you can put a menu. The primary menu is the one that will appear at the top of every page. So that's your main navigation menu. And that's the one to focus on first. And you need to balance between helping people navigate around your site and overwhelming them with drop downs of subcategories, submenu items. So there's a bit of a balance in there as to how many options you give people to navigate, which is why thinking about your page structure and your category structure up front is really helpful, because that immediately starts to reduce the number of potential permutations of categories and subcategories and submenus. You create menus either in the customize option that we looked at yesterday. You can actually do some of your menu creation in there. But if you're not in there, the quick way to do it is to go into Appearance, but then just straight into Menus. And then you can create menu items that can be pages, they can be categories, they can be specific types of categories. So for example, because we have lessons as a thing on our website, it appears there as a specific item that you could add to a menu. You can also put custom links in there if you want to take someone to another website or to a very specific piece of content that isn't a category. For example, you can add specific custom links into a menu as well. And then you just need to decide whether it's a top level or a sub level menu, a drop down element underneath one of your top level items. You don't want to have too many top level items, partly because they don't really fit on most websites because of the way that the themes are set up. So it is a good idea to have a fairly clear structure there and decide how you want people to navigate around the site and find the content. If you use categories, in your menu as an item, then what they will display as an archive page, which is very similar to the blog / newsfeed page, however you use that. They will appear in a similar way, depending on the theme. They might be slightly different if it's a category over the blog newsfeed, but essentially it will be very, very similar. You will have some customization options within your theme as to how those pages are displayed, and within WordPress itself as to how you display those category archives. For example, how many posts you display on a page before someone has to click a button to say next page. That will generally default to 10 on a page so that you're not scrolling forever before you get to go on to the next page. And another common thing is whether you show the full content of those pieces of content, those posts, or extracts from them on that page, so that you can display 10 or 15 or 20 or however many you want to display on a single page, without, again, having to scroll forever through content. It will just take you from one to another. And generally you can do that on a character basis or by using the excerpt function. And it really, that slightly depends on the theme that you're using as to how that's set up. So here, for example, is a category page, which, as you can see, is very similar to a blog page in that the posts appear in a feed with an extract from them. But rather than this being the blog, this is a category. So any posts that were put into that category were in that category in the back end in terms of how you've categorized them will then display on that page. Sidebars used to be everywhere. Now people don't generally use them on every page on their website. It's on a kind of page-by-page basis as to whether you want them. You may well turn them off on your pages and keep them on your posts. But again, that can be you can decide that on a page-by-page basis whether you show a sidebar. They're there really to provide additional navigation over and above the menu that you already have there. So, for example, on a blog newsfeed page, you may want to have links in your sidebar to recent posts that you've posted, to your most popular pieces of content, to some featured pieces of content, to your social media channels, to I'm trying to think what else you might put in the sidebar, to like an archive of all of your content, you can display categories in there. There's a number of different things that you can put into the sidebar. You create them using widgets, and you just add what you would like to your sidebars. You can also do the same with footers on your pages. So you can potentially split content that you want to appear on every page in a footer, for example, like links to your privacy policy or your terms and conditions or your contact page. Maybe something that you do want on every page, but you don't want a sidebar on your homepage. So you could put that into a footer and then use the sidebar on your more dynamic content to take people to other related content to that. They again are under appearance and hidden under widgets, which is not automatically intuitive as to where you would create sidebars and footers in WordPress, but it's under widgets. And that's because what you add to the sidebar is a widget. And that's just what WordPress calls the blocks. They're content blocks. And you can see there just some of the things that you can add into your sidebar or footer. An ability to subscribe to a blog, category clouds, tags. You can add custom HTML if you want to add links to very specific things. There's the social, as I said, social channels. And it's very easy to do because you basically just drag the widget across into the sidebar and then add any information that it needs, like a title or a link to content. And it's done. So they can be quite flexible, and you can change them and move things up and down. And so they're very useful if you use them. Good place to put a search function if you want people to be able to actually just do a search on your site. So there's lots of things that you can put into your sidebars and footers fairly easily. And here's again a couple of examples on our sidebar. We have our recent posts. We have a search bar in there. We have categories because obviously for us the letting people narrow down to whether they've got a Mac or a Windows laptop or it's their phone that they're interested in, or that they're tend to be looking for quite specific content if they've come and they're searching on the site. And we also have an archive to old content so that you can quickly hop through the months if you wanted to. You can also use it to display your top pieces of content, featured content, link to social channels. So the one on the right has links to Pinterest and Facebook on it to take people across to your social things so that people can easily follow you if they want to. It's a place to put any really important pieces of information that you want to make sure are actually on every page. So for example, on the one on the right, I have there's an Amazon affiliates disclosure on there because that needs to appear on every page of the website. So on some pages it's in the footer, and on the pages where there's no sidebar, that appears in the footer. On pages of the sidebar, it's in the sidebar because it needs to be on every page. So there's a number of ways that you can use them depending on what's important to you and the type of site that you have.
This completes part 4 of this small business website series. Please join us for part 5. Thank you.